Hi, welcome. My name is Angelique, and today I'm going to be talking about the placement Mercury in Leo as it relates to astrology. So, if you have this placement or you're just curious and want to learn a little more, this episode is going to do a deep dive into this planet, how we can understand it through the lens of mythology and symbolism, but also going to use this opportunity to find some practical ways to use this placement when it comes to our interests, our hobbies, our communication style, to see how we can more enrich our lives. So, if it's your first time listening to me, I've been a student of astrology for over 30 years. I also have a background in counseling, psychology, mental health. So I love to dive deep. Just think of like a little raccoon, just like burying into the trash, find things. Like I just love it. Especially if it relates to our psyche, our mental well-being, our physical well-being, and astrology can be used for all of that. So not just predictive tool, but a way to understand ourselves, our personality, our childhood, our upbringing, how we relate to other people. So that is why I love astrology so much. So starting with the sign of Leo, I'm going to touch on how the mythology relates to interest and communication. If you're looking for more of the mythology overall of Leo, you can check out, I have a Sun in Leo podcast episode that talks more about the history of mythology and how that all came to be. But when it comes to communication interest, Leo is ruled by the sun, so not a planet like a lot of other signs in astrology. And what that does is it kind of opens it up for interpretation, a lot more symbolism. But I like to tie it to the Roman god Sol, who was the sibling of Luna. And Luna was pretty much the ruler over the moon and night activities. So Sol is going to be ruler of the sun, and any kind of like daytime, bright, lively activities. So, what this does in the realm of Mercury and communication is going to make the communication style more bold, more fiery, more big. And that's because the sun god was a god that people actively worshipped. They made big life decisions around the sun. So, like a farmer, you really have to know what the sun is doing, when it's out, when's the best time to toil, what seasons are best. And that's going to depend on the sun. If the sun might not show up as much in certain parts of the world or certain times of the year. And so this is going to make the communication style like very magnetic. They're going to have a style that really draws people in and they're going to want that attention. But it also goes both ways. The god's soul loved this attention, loved seeing people literally light up from the sun, thrive, grow, seeing things develop because of him. And so that communication style is going to make someone who wants to see that attention. They want to see people thrive or grow or being happy from the information they're sharing, the way that they are communicating, if that makes sense. So the interests are going to kind of align with that too when we look at the mythology. So the god Sol was responsible for growing. It was very interested in growing and making things thrive here on Earth, especially living things. So animals, also people, but especially children. It's a very playful energy. And when's the time that children can mostly play outside is when it's in daylight, not as much in the moonlight. So that is where the interests are going to align for someone with Mercury and Leo, is anything that's playful or childlike, anything that's maybe very creative, artistic, also anything to do with animals. And this can be teaching as well. Anything where people's attention is focused on you, or they really want it to help anything grow for their life. And for symbolism, Leo is just a fire energy, and Mercury is an air energy. So fire and air is interesting. And some astrologers say that this placement actually is in what we would call a fall. And that can seem pretty negative, but I interpret it to mean that the communication style is just going to be more creative than logical. So going back to the symbolism here, what's going to happen to fire when too much air goes to it is it's either going to snuff it out, like when you blow out a candle, or it's going to just completely consume everything and be very destructive. So it can be harder for this placement than other placements to kind of get linear thinking out, or to maybe learn things that are super linear and logical and not as creative or artistic. So what that just means is someone with Mercury and Leo, they might learn better from a talk or a podcast, or just listening to people talk, as opposed to reading a textbook and filling out a test and it's being very logical and rational and 1 + 1 = 2. So these are going to be people who might really excel in the creative arts, performing arts, anything with television, radio, public speaking, but they could struggle a little more when it comes to writing, when it's not creative writing. So more of a technical writing, research writing, anything that's maybe math or science based, something that's like hard, analytical or logical, and there's not like a creative or a performance aspect to it. So it's not there are no bad placements, and I say this a lot. There are just some that might go against the culture, the family, your upbringing, the societal norms, depending. And so that can just be more challenging. But there are plenty of public figures that have Mercury and Leo. And as I said before, television and radio personalities. This is very, very common. Public speaking, anything creative. There is a downfall here though with some of the communication style, because Mercury and Leo might not be very interested in logic. That could mean that what they talk about, especially publicly, can not be truthful, and that can be harmful. So in a ploy to maybe win the attention and love of the public, again, Leo loves attention and being admired, and so the sign can go to great lengths to get that attention without being very logical, without bringing truth to what they do, and not being as ethical. So that's the other part of it that makes it in its fall, is that um, when we're not um, when we're not talking from a place of logic or truth, and we do that a lot or in a bigger way, this can lead to lying, um, telling fanciful truths to make yourself appear bigger, or being the head of a company, like, so spreading misinformation. That can come to this the in the pursuit of being a very big public figure, because pride is something that's big I almost said for lion, but Leo is known as a lion, so that pride is going to be big. They're very sensitive, but that means that their ego is very sensitive. So as long as they are being loved and admired, sometimes this placement is smooth sailing. But if they feel that they're not getting the attention they need, and it doesn't even have to be positive attention, negative attention can be good for them too, because people are still paying attention to them. But if there's any indifference, that can make this challenging as well. So even if someone with this placement is not a public speaker per se, they might just have a more dramatic way of speaking, a way that really turns heads or makes people turn heads to see. So they can be someone who's maybe a little more louder, a little more bolder, a little more bigger with their speech. The things they like to talk about might have a very creative flair. So instead of cold, dry, hard facts like there was a cat here, someone with Mercury and Leo might say, "Oh, there was this big cat and it had wide eyes, and it reminded me of my sister." And it's creating a very engaging story, which can be good and fun, especially if you're doing things more in the realm of creativity, artistic, but that can lead to little tiny lies if we're just not careful. So that's can be a detriment here. But Leo rules the spine and the heart. So a lot of interests that are from the heart, either literally or figuratively, can be very interesting. So, children, dating, romance, those are all heart centered. So, they might be somebody who does creative writing in any of those areas. I'm thinking like a preschool teacher, or someone who just makes music for kids, or romance, novels, writing, performance, acting in these roles. So acting in something that's performance, or kid based or musical, something where they can really shine and be dramatic, that is heart centered, or anything that's just that they feel heart connected to, can be really good. And as I said, the spine is ruled by Leo. So these people can be very, very interesting in any sports or athletic that involves their torso, their back. So this could be football, any other athletics that where there's maybe a performance aspect, but where you're moving your body in a way. So basketball is another thing I think of, but just like you were using your physicality, the strength of your back is being used. But that's also something to look out for too, especially with Mercury and Leo. That makes it more of a detriment placement. So these are people that can frequently have their back go out, can have heart related issues. So just taking care of those issues can be an interest and can help you be able to do what you want to do. There's also a level of risk that can come with this placement. You might be interested in things that are risky or not by the book, we say. So that's also where ethically there can be some line crossing with this placement if we're not careful. So doing something that's risky but on the illegal side can well, it's just not good to do, but it also can hurt other people. So just being careful. But if it's a legal risk that you're able to shoulder, so something like gambling, playing for money, a lot of careers that are artistic have an inherent amount of risk to them in a traditional Western society, because those are not jobs that usually come with a salary and benefits, and there's a lot of ebb and flow, and it can be more difficult to quote unquote make it. So that can be um, something of interest, or just a job like a podcaster, radio, television. When it comes to communication, it can be harder for you to communicate and share knowledge with people that are so dry in their speech or very technical, or it's just there's nothing like fun or exciting about the way they communicate or share information. So learning a traditional way, like in a school setting, can be difficult with this placement for a lot of people once they kind of get out of the early childhood elementary ages, because historically, we see less and less of play and full dramatic expression when you get into the higher schooling, advanced degrees, unless you go for something like journalism or dance or the performing arts, something creative, artistic, where you are um, where you're graded and given accolades for performing and expressing your way in a very creative or a bold manner. But in one-on-one situations, you really like having a back and forth with someone where you can be at the center of it, you can be the star of it, or people are laughing at your jokes or in all of you. So you might be a theater kid, possibly, or you are someone who just saves that for the stage. But in one-on-one, might like you might get a jolt when people are around you listening to one of your stories, or you singing or performing or anything like that, having an audience. You also, in personal relationships, might align more with people who enjoy what you have to say, your style of communication, and you can have fun in how you talk and share information. Somebody that's overly serious or focus on technical or more like nitpicky in communication styles could pose more of a challenge. But anything playful, communicating more playful or creatively or more fun, is going to connect with you, and that's how you're going to appear as to other people. Also note, because of that fire element, your communication could come off more aggressive, not just assertive, but more aggressive. So there could be people who take your communication in the wrong way. It can be difficult on in times when maybe you need to have a more measured, thoughtful, or quiet manner how you speak. That can create some difficulties with people that you are close to, perform or audiences or anything. So there might be an impulsive uh, quality to how you speak, and so you might say something that's hurtful without thinking, or your tone might be very aggressive or loud in a way that you're not meaning. And so that can just be something to note, that could be happening in your communication style. So it could be helpful to work on that if that's a problem for you. Okay, well, that is what I have today for Mercury and Leo. If you have this placement and you'd like to share how this comes up for you, you can leave a comment. I would love to read it. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day and take care. Bye bye.